just a little catch up on what is happening or what has been happening on the nursery since our last little wander around. Well, we've had a cold snap, and wouldn't you believe it? That is when the main heating element in this Arcada tunnel decided to not want to work. And you know what? If you've had children, you will know what it is like looking after a sick child. You have to get up in the middle of the night, you have to go and see that they're doing all right, then you go back to bed, and then you get up again to come out and see how they're doing. And that is what unfortunately my husband has had to be doing over the last couple of weeks, because this particular fire decided that it wasn't going to stay lit. Luckily we have a spare one, and what we had to do was we had to make sure that we took the bottom element bar at the bottom there, dismantled it, sent it off in the post to go and be mended by the manufacturer down in Devon, and then it was sent back to us so that we could reinstall it and put it back in again. But it was really annoying. Poor Rob was having to come in here between 10 o'clock at night, come out again at 2 o'clock at night, just to check whether it was up. We try and keep this tunnel at +5 degrees centigrade, because then that will mean that all of the little babies, all of the little seedlings are perfectly fine. And so what we had to do in the meantime, because this was being so annoying, we had some little electric heaters. They cost a fortune, by the way, but they just keep it just a little bit above. And we tried not to have those on too long. It was better to get up and come and do this. And then we were having to use horticultural fleece in this tunnel. We weren't doing it everywhere, but what we were doing it over the small, tiny little seedlings that really haven't had a chance to get anything other than coming up and going, oh, it's nice and warm, and then suddenly, oh my word, it's cold. So that is something that's happened in here. And then the other thing that's happened is that this mist bed here, so this is one of our propagation tables, the fine spray comes out of these nozzles, and it sprays for either a second, 3 seconds, 5, 7, 9, depending on how many seconds we want it to make it moist on the trays of plants that are sitting on the benches here. That's the setting of the time of the length of spray. But the actual controllers, which are over here on this box here, are controlled by these here, which are called solar mist. Now, unfortunately, because these were put in over 27 years ago, the little bit at the top here, which is the sensor, is breaking up and stopping working. So it means that it's making these pulse. So this basically senses how bright it is. And then if it's brighter, these come on more regularly. If it's not so bright, it doesn't spray as often. So we are now going to have to go back to what we used to have years ago, and this is an electronic leaf. Now the electronic leaf works very, very simply. It has 2 nodes there, which once water goes onto them, once they're dry, it switches on the water. Waterfalls, this is like the surface of a leaf. Once it gets moist enough and all the water on there, your connection between your 2 electrodes is set. And then once it dries off, switches on again. So that should bring it on at the right time. But at the moment, we can't get it set properly. Luckily, we don't need this bench yet, and we don't need it for about another 3 weeks. So we are really trying to work out what is wrong with our system, whether we need new control boxes, whether we need new solenoids. There's all these sorts of things that go on behind the scenes, and you just need it to get going. And at the moment, that noise you can hear is the mist going off on the other bed, which is misting really nicely and keeping going. Because it got so cold over the last few weeks, and these young seedlings had germinated and were on the hotbed over there, and they had to come off because we needed the space to put some more on. They came onto this bench. They get a little bit of help because they're sitting on polystyrene, but obviously the air temperature, with the fact that our gas heater had decided to pack down, we needed to protect them. And the easiest way is by using this beautiful stuff. This is called horticultural fleece, and when you're trying to put it on an item like this and you've got all these labels, as we've just demonstrated, they can fall out. But the easiest thing to do to try and just raise the temperature and protect young seedlings underneath, you just lay it flat like this over the top. The labels just hold it a little bit above so that it gets a good amount of airflow underneath there, and it always helps to have an extra pair of hands to help you put something like this onto the cover. This horticultural fleece is brilliant. It's very, very strong. It's very lightweight, so it just sits there and is really good. Now the only other thing we have to do is we leave it on overnight, but in the daytime when you get the nice bright sunlight again, you need to take it back off, and that has to happen both morning and night. You've got to either very, very carefully, and this is the one thing where you have got to have two people, because you're needing to just gently take it off and make sure that your labels do not come out as you are going through. And that set of labels just wants to jump out, I've decided. So we're not laying the labels down because you don't want them flicking all over the place, because you need to know which ones you've actually got in here, but they actually help. So it's laying over the top of here, and it'll help to keep this air temperature at least 1.5 degrees warmer than the air temperature around, which is just enough to keep these frost free. And that is what we've had to do as well. So there are ways of getting around when things go wrong. So now we have lots of little babies waiting to be pricked out. These are the young ones here, lovely little seedlings, and they're all going to be pricked out and look like smart little plants in their plug cells like so. So we have got lots and lots of material. This is the time of the year for all of our different seedlings to be coming through. So these are the unpricked out ones. And then over on the far side, you can see all of these young ones that have been pricked out, all sorts of different plant material here. This, for instance, is digitalis, and we have got lupins here, and we've got eryngiums, all sorts of things and different ages, but they're all looking fantastic. All looking really great, and it's so good to see. Spring is a lovely time of year. Lots and lots of potential lovely new plants all coming through. Storm Aisha came through, and we no longer have a cover on this tunnel. Thankfully, this is a netting tunnel. It's supposed to be covered in this green netting all the way over the top there. When Storm Aisha came through, she split the tunnel. It split right the way along the top, and it fell very neatly on two sides. Well, not quite so neatly, because it got itself all tangled up in the irrigation posts on that side, tangled up in the stock plants on the other side. So once it got a little bit less blowy, we just put it down and cut it off at the base, because otherwise, if you try and do anything in the wind, especially with that type of netting, it's like a big sail, and you could end up right up here. What we didn't want was we didn't want the netting itself to disappear over into the trees or into our neighbour's property. So that was that bit. Now, it hasn't actually done an awful lot of damage to the actual structure, so there's nothing wrong with the metalwork here, but one of these posts, as we'll see on the other side, has actually come down. All it really requires is 3 screws going in the end of the wood through the metal here, holding it together. Now, we won't recover this probably until April. Why that late and why not now? Well, it's quite blowy at the moment and it's still quite cold. Even with this being green netting, if you do it in cold weather, you can't stretch it and pull it over really tight. So we'll wait until a bright sunny April day, and then with a few hands, we will get it over the top. We will pull it really strongly down so that we've got it tight right the way around, get it battened on down to the bottom, and that will see us through for at least another 10, 15 years. Now, we haven't actually got rid of, we don't do that when we're on the nursery, if something is still usable. So the netting was still perfectly usable. We've power washed it off and it has gone into the sales area and become the coverings of some of our sales area benches. As you can see, luckily this is the only bit that has had anything go wrong with it. Just needs a little bit of manhandling back up to here. I think what has happened is they've got these metal, well, they're a bit like staples that go around here and hold them there, and that has actually slipped down. So that's going to have to be undone, lifted up slightly, retightened up, and then we can lift this bit and then attach it to there. And that's all we've got to mend apart from putting a cover back onto the top. None of the plant material within this tunnel will really come to any harm. It is all shade-loving material, and as you can see, it is all deciduous, so there's no real growth on it at the moment. And being shade-loving, the majority of this plant material is from deciduous shade. So as you can see, the deciduous trees have no leaves on them, so these are not in shade at this time of the year. Once we get to April and the leaves start to come on, that is when we need to get the shade tunnel back up on and covering these plants. So I said we were rebuilding our benching here in the actual sales area, and what we do is we stack up a load of pallets. Originally we were only 3 high and that was a little bit too low, so now we've gone to 4 high, and this is part of that shade netting which has been cleaned. It's going to be repurposed and go around all of the benching like there. So a new bench will look really, really great. We've got other benches further out on the nursery which are being redone. So if we have a little look over there, you can see all of the nursery beds, and you can see a stack of pallets, and you can also see slabs all on the ground. So what we are doing is one by one, we are changing a lot of these benches, because over the years pallets rot. So we've got 2 taken up here, we've got pallets there, and then these will be made higher, and that will make our brilliant benching here. Nothing like repurposing and making sure that we're not having to buy new stuff all the time. Repurposing is always something that people on nurseries do all the time. So here you see, this was an old bench here. We've got slabs to be able to make sure that when the pallets are put up, so this is old slabs that were taken off someone's terrace and had something new put in, repurpose, reuse. They can level it off, means that the pallets aren't sitting right on the ground, therefore they last just that bit longer. We have got the old matting that's there ready to go back on top. The irrigation will go back on top. These 2 will be done shortly. We've just about got enough pallets to do this one, and you can see this one over here is at the old 3 pallet height, and it's just starting to sink where the pallets are going off. So we will gradually work our way up through these with as many pallets as we've got, and that way we will have fresh new benching and lovely fresh new plants for people to be able to purchase. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel.